Welcome to another episode of the Bluprint Pod. I am your host, Ray Roots, and today I am not alone on the podcast. I have my co-host and my co-founder and my visuals, Muhammad Imam. How are you, man? Good to have you back. How are you?
It's been a while, man. It's been a while. It's been about a month or something. I haven't recorded. Last week I recorded the video and I was hella rusty. Looked like a vampire. Sucked all my blood out. I felt bad. I felt sick, but I beat in the Rona and I'm back.
You beat the Rona, man.
Back to make sure that we grab 2021 and the YouTube algorithm by the neck and
That's
beat
what
his
we do.
ass.
Let's go. Like you did with COVID, right? You beat the YouTube algorithm.
COVID destroyed me. It's like when you go to school, you try to
Rubbish.
to the year 11s and you're in year 7. No, sir. That whooped my ass.
Damn. Well, good to have you back. And I want to introduce you to our guest guys and girls, if you're listening. I think 100% of our demographic is guys. But anyways.
No, it's changed, actually. We've got a pretty good balance.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. There we go.
Yeah,
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have a visual designer on the podcast today. I want you to all to say hello to Zu. How are you, Zu?
Hello, everybody. Welcome back
That's an
to
intro.
another episode of the Bluprint Podcast. What can I say? For creatives, by creatives. We love to see it. We love to hear it. We love to taste it. We love to smell it.
sir.
Oh, there we
yeah,
go.
guys,
That's an intro.
Okay.
You can
but
hire him
guys,
for his intros,
my
by the
name
way.
is Zu. Huh?
You can hire him for his intros, by the way.
Inshallah.
I
Listen,
might.
Listen, bro. There's not a flat fee. We'll discuss later on, inshallah. Don't worry.
So you know more.
You know what I'm saying? What's your budget? What's your fee? What's your budget? What's your fee? Anyway. So, my name is Zubair or Zubair in Arabic, aka Zu, aka BookofZu. I'm a visual designer based in London. I'm 24. I'm also a podcast host / creator as well / content creator. My podcast is called BookofZu. It was launched initially in February 2018. It's a societal / cultural podcast where I basically cover on topics that are both serious and fun, with a mix of my personality, but also covering, like I said, serious topics. More so from the minority Muslim perspective. Topics like the lack of communication and emotional intelligence amongst friendships in men. And that's just to name one of them. I've got quite a lot of episodes available at the moment. I have not released a new season yet, but it's coming soon, inshallah. But just before we get started, if you do enjoy my personality or whatever I bring to the table this episode, I appreciate if you followed me or checked me out. My podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Anchor FM, Spotify, and I'm sure a few other platforms can't really recollect right now. And you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at BookofZu, which is BOOKOFZU.
Big time. That you know what? That's how you do an intro.
Mhm.
From now on, I'm gonna do an intro like that. That's what I'm gonna
Yes,
do
sir.
from now on. You
Yes,
should
sir.
start
Bro,
doing
do you
courses.
know why? Do you know why? In 2021, we are carrying ourselves with the confidence of a straight white man who is not qualified to do a job but applies and gets a job anyway.
Yes,
And I
I like that. How did you get into podcasting? You've been doing it since 2018. Like, how did you get into
Yeah.
it? And like, how do you even stay like consistent for 3 years?
First of all, I'm not lying. I'll be a fraud if I put consistent with next to my name. I started off being consistent. But okay, cool.
You
I
say
initially started
consistent
my
quality.
podcast. And bro, even the quality, bro, was lacking. I mean, obviously, listen, I made the best out of what I had in it. Like the majority of my podcast is recorded on my iPhone. Alhamdulillah, now I have a proper microphone. I have an audio interface that I'm using as we speak now. But obviously, like I said, you make the best out of what you have. But I initially started my podcast in February 2018. Mainly because I wanted to create content, and do you know what? Funnily enough, BookofZu started out as a YouTube channel before it became a
Oh,
podcast. And not many people know, but I only made 2 videos. I made a story time of when I broke into my primary school after school to steal ice cream when I was 9.
Yo,
Because I'm a shaitan in it,
hold
yeah.
up, stop.
Yo,
Listen,
Wait,
the
I actually have a
poverty,
wait.
the poverty.
bro, I actually
Brother,
have a similar story.
listen. I am so listen. I was so poor that if I was still at the same financial level I was at that point, I'd probably receive an American stimulus, and I'm British.
Hey.
All right, damn. Well, hold up. I want to hear the
Poverty.
story. You broke into what? I want to hear the
Partner.
story. And yo, what? I'm so confused right now. I'm so confused. I want to hear the story.
Oh my
You did
God.
what into your
Benefits
school?
baby. Benefits baby. What can I say? But yeah, I'm not like. Let me give you the quick synopsis. Okay, so what basically happened was that during summertime they used to sell ice cream, right? But being poor, being underprivileged, I never had money like that to buy ice cream in it. But I still wanted that sweet nectar. So I
That
obviously
99p
I
flake.
basically used to. I'm screaming, bro. I basically used to help this teacher with packing up the toys in the playground, and she was basically giving me her keys to go and open up the shed to put the toys back inside, right? So I basically devised this whole plan. I used to play it after school anyway, on days here and there, because my mom, honestly,
Man,
Guantanamo Bay,
I was like Tom
But anyway,
Cruise,
brother.
inside agent.
So anyway, Allahu Akbar. So yeah, so then basically it was she used to give me her keys, and the building basically to get access to the building you had to use a fob, like a key fob. So I basically helped her one day, devised the whole plan of my friend, how I'm basically gonna put the toys away, I'm gonna take the fob, and then I'm basically gonna return it after I'm done with it the next day. So I basically waited to play out. After I played out, we basically went to go through the school gate, and do you know what? At these times I was like 9 or 10 years old, and that was maybe 2010 maybe. And them times my primary school never had CCTV, which is weird because there's little kids around. Anyway, so I basically waited to play out. After I came out, now we climbed over the gate, got inside. Now I wanted to go through the main entrance, but that door was locked in the corridor, so I wanted to go round up the staircase and around. But when I basically went up the staircase, the alarm went off, and when I tell you the fear of God that entered my body, I was shaking, I was vibrating like a Nokia 3210, fam. Literally I literally grabbed my friend, and we literally ran out of there, climbed over. When I tell you, I went home and I pissed my pants, fam. I was like, I'm going to prison. Anyway, it was the drama was a lot. The next day, I basically pretended to be sick. And I
So,
basically was like, oh my
but what
God,
did
they're
you
going to
get
put
out
me
of it? Sorry.
out. Nothing, because Allah subhanahu punished me as I should have been. You know what I'm
This is
saying? Allah
short-lived
said,
criminal
you wanted ice cream, but here's jail instead. But yeah, so then I basically played sick the next day, and then my friend came to knock for me again, and I was like, "No, I'm not coming out. I feel ill." And he's like, "Oh, don't worry, don't worry." They basically had an assembly saying that the fire alarm went off, but it was triggered by some wind. I was like, "The miracle is that the Lord is working for me right now." I said, "Alhamdulillah, fam." And from that day,
Oh my
I never did anything like that ever again.
That's what you call a short-lived criminal career.
You know
Oh
what's
my
funny?
God!
I have a similar story. I have a literal
Wait,
similar
well,
story.
what?
Yes. It looks like these
Oh my
English primary schools weren't very secure. But first
Mm-mm.
of all, Zoo, like, weren't your parents like? Didn't they check for you like after school? Didn't you get picked up or something? Or do
No,
you
no,
walk home
no, they
yourself?
did. But no, they did. But the thing is, I would get collected, I would go home. But my primary
Mm.
school was on the next road to me. So when I'd basically play
Okay,
out in my area, it was local. 3-minute walk.
you are local. Yeah,
The
so I
criminality.
remember.
Allahu Akbar.
I actually managed to get away with some goods in my one, but it was
Oh
because
yeah.
there was a school trip, yeah, and I didn't like even have the money to actually pay for the school trips because we had to pay for them, and then
Mm-hmm.
there was one day where they had a whole bunch of snacks for the school trip, and I remember like I found out where they were. They were in the library and they were like stashed under a bunch of shelves. Yeah, and that was meant to be for like the whole like year group. Yeah, they were meant to eat from that set of food. And then I found out about it, and I got a couple of friends with me. And then after school, we we got our stash, and then we made out with it. And I would have gotten away with it too. And then one of the people I was with, they told other people, and
Oh,
those people went and tried
Raymond.
to do their thing, and they got caught.
oh
and,
no.
and then I didn't know that until the next day. I come in, I'm seeing this one of the white kids who got caught coming in pointing at me.
I'm
I was
dead.
like, no, I'm done out here.
It
I'm
was a
done.
wrap.
And
It
my
was a
dad
wrap.
heard. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I got away with it, but I didn't even get like punished too badly by my parents because normally, oh boy, I would have got an ass whooping of a lifetime. But yeah,
For
boy,
real.
I don't know why that story triggered my story, but yeah, it's primary school
Listen.
kid.
I mean, siblings in poverty, bro. I feel the struggle.
Literally, primary
Siblings in
school was an
poverty, fam.
interesting time.
But yeah,
It
man.
was.
But yeah, so that's kind of one of the story times that I did on my YouTube page, and I made a vlog about London stuff, things that people don't care about. Anyway, so then I obviously being on Twitter, I became more active on Twitter in like 2014. I built like a little bit of a small following. It's still small now. But basically, I used a platform called Curious Cat, which is basically like an anonymous questioning platform, which you guys know about anyway. But if you don't
Yeah.
know, that's what it is. As in for the listeners, not for you guys. But anyway, yeah. So people would ask me really like personal, intimate, like deep questions. In terms of not about my personal life, but they would express things they were dealing with, things they were going through, and I would kind of take the time and take the alternative route in terms of answering the question in detail and actually giving people a proper answer. Because most people on Twitter, when they do Curious Cat, they do it for the bants, like they do it for banter. So they
Yeah.
don't really give people that are actually reaching out on a serious thing, serious like proper advice. But the
Yeah.
issue is that a lot of times the things we go through, a lot of people go through them as well. But the problem
Mm.
with Curious Cat is you spend all this time replying to this person, obviously physically for the sake of Allah. But by 1 hour, 2 hours, it's already drowned in a sea of tweets. And
Mm.
the level of as in the amount of people that are able to benefit from that advice is gonna minimize. So people always said, I can kind of imagine you having a talk show, as in like as I was growing up, or having some sort of like content creating platform or something. So I goes, you know what? I
Mm.
kind of like the concept of doing a podcast. At that point, I didn't know what a podcast was.
Yeah.
I kind of just imagined it as like a radio kind of show. I
Mm.
mean, it is technically kind of radio, just it's not backed by like a proper radio show or like a radio
Yeah.
platform. Anyway, so yeah, so I kind of wanted to immortalize that content. I also wanted to speak about the things that I speak about on Twitter, the threads that I used to make about things that bothered me, like serious stuff, like things that affect either men or women, the Muslim community, the Maghribi community, colorism, anti-blackness, sexism, like loads of things, or like the lack of sex education in the Muslim community is something that as a Muslim community we all suffer with. Or suffer from. But yeah, so I kind of wanted to maximize the amplification of the content or advice or content I was making, period. So yeah, so I
Yeah.
made my podcast to immortalize that and to amplify it and put it out there.
Mm. It's interesting because I feel like you did it more from a perspective where you wanted to advise people and help them out as well. But like, how has that kind of evolved into your creative career? Like, would you say your creative career started before that, or like what were your like creative
Um,
origins? I kind of want to know a bit
my
more
creative
about that.
origins, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so my creative origin started in secondary school, or as I call it, high school, because my school had high school at the end of its name. But the first time I was introduced to anything creative was by one of my lifetime favorite teachers called Miss Locke. And she was basically a textile teacher, but she was a whiz at everything. She was a graphic designer. She had worked on film sets. She had designed film posters. Like she makes like custom like clothing. Like she does everything.
Mm.
And obviously, throughout from year 7 to year 9, you basically do the standard curriculum, and you basically switch in terms of doing like a creative subject, but every 6 weeks. So stuff like design technology, DT, food tech,
Yeah.
and textiles. And
Yeah.
textiles was something I really enjoyed because she obviously was teaching it, and I loved her approach to teaching. And
Mm.
growing up, I never had a lot of teachers that really understood me or really rooted for me.
Mm.
So me and her kind of resonated on a personal level. Anyway, when it came to the time where we basically had to pick our GCSEs, we had to make two choices, both for year 10 and year 11. And when it came time for the selection for the year 11 subjects, she was basically doing a trial group, and she basically wanted to make a small class basically of 15-year-olds at the time, including year 11, to do A-level photography with our GCSEs.
Right.
So basically, instead of doing a GCSE, basically you do an A level instead. And she basically asked me to write an essay about something I'm passionate about, basically just for her to be able to gauge my written ability. And alhamdulillah, yeah, I got into that course, and that's kind of when my love for creative stuff started. So I actually started doing photography first. So visual design, graphic
Right.
design wasn't my beginnings. Photography was.
Yeah.
I have a
So
question.
my knowledge, yo,
Sorry, sorry for interrupting me. I have a question.
no.
I first stumbled across the term GCSEs when I was fangirling Harry Potter actors in the early 2000s.
Wow.
What on earth is a GCSE?
Do you know what it was? I cannot put up the exact breakdown of as in what's an abbreviation for, but it's basically the
Um,
qualification that we get in secondary school, which in
yeah,
like American system.
Oh,
Obviously, I know you're from Denmark, right?
yes.
Or Norway? Denmark. Okay, cool.
That's
I'm
Denmark.
not sure how the system is over there, but in America, I believe secondary school would be middle school.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, something like that.
yeah. Well, okay, whatever.
And GCSEs
Sorry.
Because
are
high
the
school in America is,
qualification.
is college for us, and college for
Yeah,
them is university for us.
yeah.
Yeah, it's very confusing. Very, very
Mm.
confusing. Because here in Denmark, they called what Americans would call high school, they called it college as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
But they also called it upper secondary education or something like that. So I'm very, very
Well, who
confused in
knows?
terms of it. Yeah, but sorry, you can keep going. I just wanted to ask what the hell that was, but you keep going.
Yeah, so my creative origins began in photography. So that's kind of where I learned about depth of field, the rule of thirds, composition, and a lot of those things have contributed to the way I design today as well. In terms of being obsessed with like symmetry and balance to like a certain extent. So that was where I started my creative stuff. When I went to college, I did a few things. I did geography, I did biology, I did media, but focusing on video, and I did photography as well because I had an AS level from my GCSE, so I wanted to finish the A2. And I never, at that point, I wasn't making any vector graphics or vector based designs. So after that, I kind of knew that I wanted to go into something creative. So I initially applied to a different university, and in 2015, and the course I chose initially was called digital design with professional practice. And it was a 4-year course with a placement year. But I ended up starting this course, and I hated the uni. I hated the approach to teaching. I hated the curriculum, and I was miserable for a year. So I kind of plucked up the courage and told myself that I'm miserable, and if this was something that I feel like I was destined to do, I don't think I would feel this way. So I kind of plucked up the courage and decided to leave. So I left university in 2016, and I took almost 3 years off. And in 2017, I remember back when I was in my previous course. I remember them showing us some third year work, and I remember seeing this person design these little characters that are like vectors, and I was like, that's so cool. I wish I could do something like that. And I goes, you know what? Why don't I learn how to use Illustrator? Because being that my background was photography, I only mainly use Photoshop. So I never use Illustrator ever. So I basically watched a tutorial on YouTube on how to make a pizza logo. It was a very ugly logo, but I basically used it to teach me the general skills, and then learned those general skills, and obviously, adding hundreds of hours of practice and playing with stuff. I was able to bring the ideas of my imagination to life. So in 2017, I would probably say that's where my visual design career and love kind of started, and I kind of found my purpose again. But that's a whole different story. But yeah.
I think I can speak for myself. Like there's I want to learn so many things, right? I want to learn 3D design. I want to learn visual effects and stuff like that. But it I've also been at a point where I said, you know what, I need to learn Photoshop, and I've learned it. I learned Adobe softwares. I've learned DaVinci Resolve and stuff. But how do you actually know which ones are gonna be the ones that you can actually put your energy into, and the ones that how do you like put that filter in so you don't start working on 100 different things you want to do, but you can focus on that one thing?
Honestly, I would say that it's all trial and error. I don't think there's one sort of thing where you're like, oh, this is kind of it. But for me, because I already came from a creative background, but it was just a little bit hazy. I wanted to specialize, and this is something that I always wanted to learn. And I think it's kind of a thing where because I had like this undying passion for it, it's kind of a thing where okay, cool. Me as a person, I'm hot or cold. Like there's no in between for me. I'm either in or I'm out. So for me, when I kind of went through whatever I went through with uni and the course, I kind of wanted to find myself again, but I also wanted to create like a design aesthetic that's unique to me. And I know a lot of people may view that as unorthodox in terms of when you're learning because people tend to use other designers as references and this great designer, blah 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 blah. but I didn't want my creativity to be polluted. In a way where I'm not saying that their skills are trash, not at all. But I wanted to find out who I was as a designer. I wanted to create my own unique style to a certain extent. Nothing is really unique at this point. Everything in the industry is mainly innovation with very little invention, but it's fine. But I basically wanted to create an aesthetic that when people saw my work, they knew it was me. So when they saw certain things, they knew it was me. So I basically wanted to establish like an online brand, and then my background in kind of using Illustrator is what basically allowed me to create my visual branding for BookofZu. Um, so yeah, so I kind of just stumbled into it kind of. So for me, it wasn't a thing where I said, you know what, I'm gonna learn this pizza logo, and 3-4 years later, I'm gonna be back in university doing a different course and chasing this dream. So yeah.
So I've got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you say that you try not to get influenced too much by other artists and other creatives, but where would you say you get your inspiration from then? Because I don't believe that ideas just come out of anywhere. I feel like there's always some kind of influence somewhere. So where would you say your strongest influence is?
Yeah, so
By the way, a
obviously,
listener asked that
you
question, so
know,
I'm just reading it on.
uh-huh. But come again?
By the way, a listener actually asked that question, so I'm just reading it on as
Okay, yeah,
well.
no worries. No worries. Obviously, like I said, I feel like at this point, people say, oh, don't do YouTube or don't do podcasting or don't do coding and don't do. It's so saturated. Like that's just like a
Mm,
negative kind of outlook on things, because at the end of the day, everything these days is saturated, right? So the way I
yeah,
view it is that it's more about innovation than it is about invention. So it's not
yeah.
a thing where I'm above, taking inspiration from other people. Absolutely not. Like scrolling through, Instagram or scrolling through Twitter. Like sometimes I'll see illustrations that I like, and I will save them, because just by looking at them, I can kind of teach myself stuff in terms of but like perspective, or proportions, and like these are things that are really important to me. So I would say in terms of getting inspiration for ideas, I wouldn't say that I take from other designers, but I would say in terms of technique, 100%, I definitely do take inspiration from designers that I see everywhere. Really, you don't have to have a big platform, you don't have to be renowned and be published in a book or a magazine or a newspaper or have your own blog. But if you're like a small Twitter profile and I like your work, like sometimes I'll just save some work just because I appreciate it. Or if I feel like I'm gonna make something similar, I kind of take from the technique that they used, then yeah.
Mm,
I hear that. I like when I first started. Oh, I mean, I wouldn't say when I first started out, because I started out as a really young person. But
Mm.
when I first really started taking like photo manipulation serious, I would be looking at everyone's profiles on Instagram, and I would whenever someone did something I like, I would try to recreate it, but not to post it and to claim it as this is my style. It was just a way for me to learn the techniques, like you
Exactly,
mentioned. Like that was definitely
exactly.
so. When in a previous episode, I said like I had uh Creations of LA on Instagram. He was a huge inspiration to me, and also another guy called The Brightest Hour, and they did crazy photo manipulation stuff. And I think those guys in particular have really helped me push myself to a place where I can use the techniques I've used in the process of trying to imitate them to now create my own style. I think everyone who takes inspiration ends up in this place where they at least try to copy something. It doesn't have to be the work; it could be the technique, but they use it to create their own style. And I think that's how you actually create something unique or something that is innovative, as you said, not
Right,
necessarily
right, right.
original.
Right.
mm.
Yeah,
All right.
one
So,
hundred percent.
were you gonna say something?
No, I think I was just gonna add on to my point about creative. I didn't want my creativity to be polluted. More so in a way because you have to ask yourself, what are your intentions, what are your goals. And for me, I always knew at some point I'd be working in the industry in some form of capacity, but I have to ask myself, why would an agency or a studio or a business or whoever or client period hire me if I'm making the same work as everyone else? I don't stand out. And for me, I'm very against being cookie cutter as a person. Period. Like most of my life, I've done my own thing. I've held my own opinion. I've gone against the grain. Not to be cliche, but that's kind of my outlook on life in general. So for me, I have to ask myself, when it does get to the point where I feel like my skills are good enough for me to be paid for my work, why would someone come to me if I'm making the same work as everyone else?
I think that's a very important point because a lot of people like follow the same set of like creatives and the same set of educators as creative educators as well, and then I don't know, they all somehow expect different results. Obviously there's thousands of different factors that come into play with the work you produce and how you might get
Right,
discovered, but it's just
right.
interesting in that way. But how would you suggest someone should kind of like kind of detach themselves from that idea of learning from all of these different people? Because it's good to be different and unique, but how do you learn to be that way as well? And how do you just be a bit more? How do you feel like? How do you suggest someone should feel to not worry about what other people think and how other people do things and all that stuff? Because like the whole creative industry is a very polluted place in that way, because people want like come to you and they say they want a certain thing, but then they don't like actually want you for your kind of creative qualities. It's an interesting thing to talk about, I think.
To be fair, those are quite heavy loaded questions. Like we could probably do like a whole episode about as well. But
Mm.
I would say in terms of, I mean, I'm not saying that don't learn from other people. 100% learn from them, but you have to put a limit on it. Because once you keep reproducing someone else's work, you're their clone. Like, and I mean, I know people say that there's nothing wrong with learning from the best and the masters and da 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 da. Da, but who do you want to be? What do you want to be remembered for? Like you have to ask yourself. Like, for me, I ask myself, one, okay, cool. I ask myself, what are my goals? My goals are to create somewhat of a unique kind of aesthetic that's true to who I am as a person. One example I can give is that the first sort of batch of avatars I made, I knew that I wanted to make ethnic minority avatars. Mainly because the creative industry is so white dominated, especially in the country I live in anyway, which is the UK. And we don't there's not a lot of real representation, or the representation that is being provided is being provided by such little like groups of minorities, or sometimes it's actually being made by white designers, but it's just like taking on my mentality that I apply to life in general, but also to my podcast. I'm also about marginalized communities setting their own tone to their narrative. I don't want anyone else telling my story. I don't want anyone else speaking for me and my community. So for me, I go to myself, how can I both create work for my portfolio that I can experiment with and I can build my design aesthetic, but also that is actually some good, because representation to me is important to an extent. Of course, we can argue about representation politics and whatever else, but representation to an extent is important. People need to see things that look like them. Otherwise, they're not going to feel comfortable all the way. But in terms of being able to develop your own design aesthetic, there's no, like I said, listen, there's no one way. But like I said, you have to be very, very careful with imitating people. Like
Raymond Roots.
said, like he would imitate people or recreate their work just to learn the technique, just to learn, how did they go about it, or kind of like sometimes in like you need to be stimulated, so you need to kind of stretch yourself. So if you attempt at making someone you consider a master of whatever craft, and you attempt to make that cool, it may not be exactly the same, but there's so much valuable education in that. So I would say definitely do stuff like that, but you have to ask yourself, who do you want to be as a insert whatever role? Because obviously I'm not sure, what the demographic breakup is for the people that listen to your podcast, but what kind of creative do you want to be? What do you want to be remembered for? What do you want people to feel when they see your work? What do you want to feel when you see your work? Like, you have to ask all these things, because ultimately, like, it's your creation, and you have to ask yourself, does your creation represent who you are as a person? Because when you don't put these things in the forefront, you end up losing yourself and you end up becoming a clone. And for me, I'm so against being cookie cutter, but some people want to be cookie cutter. So if you do want to be a Banksy clone, then you want to be a Banksy clone. But there's only one Banksy, and there's only one you. So why are you spending all this time and effort trying to be someone else when you're enough as yourself?
Mm.
And in terms of not caring about what people think or say about your work, that's something that I don't have 100% down pat. I definitely thick skinned, but there's definitely still times and moments where things can get to me. Like, I'm a human being, I have feelings, I have emotions, um, and for me it's a bit different for me because, like I said, I'm obviously self taught, and I spent like 3 years like developing my own style, finding myself, and whatever else. And I've gone back to university to do another creative course, and I'm being challenged with obstacles that I wasn't challenged with before. So the things that I kind of became immune to within those 3 years, I'm now having things that I've never interacted with or encountered ever. So
Mm.
my reaction may not necessarily be the most conducive to me developing a thick skin, but it's
Mm.
also just about doing the best that you can and just staying true to yourself, and not losing yourself, and not placing too much value on other people's opinions, because ultimately the only person's opinion that matters on your work is yours.
Okay, I think you raised a lot of solid points, and it's interesting that you started talking about what you're currently doing, because that's kind of what I was going to talk about next. I was kind of discussing with Ray before. He's going by Ray, by the way, just in case. You mentioned
We'll
his
keep
real
out
name
my
again.
government name later. Don't worry.
So, nah, yeah,
Oh my
thank you,
god, I called you out.
thank you for the
I'm
extra editing.
sorry.
But
Yes,
oh,
extra editing work.
I kind of discussed things with Ray a few times over the last couple of weeks about who we bring on the podcast, because I feel like it's important to have a range of people. Personally, I feel like it's good to have people that are starting up at intermediate level, at master level, and just getting all of their insights and their stories. And I feel like that's what gives people a more balanced idea of how you can kind of go about things, and also get a bit more inspiration in that way. So I kind of wanted to talk about how like being self-taught versus formally taught, and also like, sorry, excuse me, and also how you were originally doing your other degree, and then now you're in this degree, but you've also told me before that when you started this degree you're actually doing another course, and then that just wasn't for you, so you
Yeah,
eventually
yeah.
changed it over. And how is that working for you now? So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Oh my god, fam, musical degrees, fam. I need to behave, fam. No, fam, you know musical seats when you get up and sit down when the music stops and plays. That's the game I've been playing, and I need to calm down immediately. Immediately. However,
Are you on the third one yet?
what do you say? Nah, the third one. Ooh, Mo. Now you trying to draw me out, then I'm come for you now. I'm playing. Okay, so if I would compare being a formally taught versus being self-taught, I think it's difficult. But let me speak from my perspective, and the fact that I'm more on the visual, graphic design kind of aspect of things. And obviously, I'm not a fine art student. I'm not Galileo or Da Vinci, so I can't speak for fine art. But what I can say is that, and do you know what, funnily enough, me and Mo actually had this I wouldn't say disagreement, but we kind of disagreed on whether creativity can be taught or not. And
I, I
I'm one
literally
of the
raised
people,
this with
huh?
Ray yesterday.
Oh,
I
for real.
literally raised this with Ray yesterday. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but yeah, literally, it was I am one of the people that, with my chest, I will say, I don't think creativity can be taught. I think either you have it or you don't. Like, I definitely feel like, you know how sometimes people would say how that, people are born with certain talents and da 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 da. I feel like some other things aside from being physically able, or being able to sing or dance or whatever else that's more biological, more physical. I definitely feel like I feel like our genetics, and I don't have any studies to back this up, but I genuinely feel like different people have different affinities towards different things, and that's why some people are able to pick up things so easily compared to other people. Like there's someone that will be 30 and has never played a violin in their life, and within 2 years they're at master level that people have has taken people 20 years to achieve. Like there are certain things that people have affinities to, and I feel like creativity is one of those things. It's either you have it or you don't. Because creativity is a thing that you can't, like, what really is creativity? Can we really sit down and define it? It's like trying to define what's normal. Like, it's subjective, so we can't really put a pinpoint on what creativity really is. However, even with singers, for example, someone can be classically trained singer, but if they don't have any
Yeah.
creativity, they just sound like everyone else. They just sound square. But people
Yeah.
that are innovating and doing different things and creating their own like unique style and flavor, like, how can you teach that? And
Mm.
I feel like that applies to like creative things, period, as well.
Yeah.
But in terms of comparing being self-taught and formally taught, I feel like being formally taught, you always have constraints put around you, right? And being self-taught, you have no constraints. And both have their pros and cons. Having your constraints, you have some direction, some sort of navigation. You have a brief, like you have certain parameters you must stay within. Being self-taught, you can do whatever the hell you like, but that can also be to your detriment. Because sometimes in the year, like I feel like as creatives, I'm not sure if you guys agree with me, but like literally, every single day, I have so many different ideas flying through my head, right, about random things. Like, and it's not
Yeah.
always just about visual design. But
Yeah.
there's been periods where sometimes it will become so overwhelming to have all these ideas that I end up procrastinating and doing nothing. In that kind of aspect, like these kind of like being self-taught or not being under an institution, can be difficult as well because you spend so much time trying to navigate the industry or trying to find out who you are because no one's telling you. But
Mm,
being formally taught, sometimes people are teaching you who you are, and a lot of
mm,
people that are formally taught and whatever they're taught in always say that it's only when I left did I actually have to discover who I was.
mm.
So, like it's difficult because, these are both things on different sides of the spectrum.
Yeah.
However, I would say just the main thing is for me is that I feel like the main things that are impacted by being formally taught or self-taught is the mentality. I feel like self-taught people are much more independent on average. I personally would say, obviously, I don't have any studies. I can't go on PubMed and pull up a study for you. However, my personal opinion is that I feel like self-taught people are much more independent and they're more of go-getters. And I can say this because, in my course personally, obviously because I've been doing this stuff for like 3 years now, whatever else, in terms of my visual design stuff. I already came to university knowing who I was. I already came to university knowing what kind of designer I wanted to be. I already know what kind of work I wanted to make. But there's a lot of people that are around me that are waiting for lecturers and professors and leaders to tell them who they are. Do you understand? So like there'll be times where we're presenting work and just the way that they look at the lecturers, like they're waiting for them to validate them. And for
Mm,
me, obviously, like at the same time, I do have briefs and grades to get, but at the same
yeah.
time, my list of priorities isn't to please and impress professors. It's to be able to obviously get a good grade, meet the brief, but to do it in a way that's true to who I am as a person. Do you understand? So
Mm,
like a lot of people that are around me that I'm surrounded by are still finding themselves, and I've already found myself.
mm,
Do you think there's a difference? Do you think there's a pattern in terms of formally taught individuals and self-taught individuals and success in the creative industry? I know success is a relative term, but do you think one of or the other is more likely to achieve their creative dreams?
I would say, okay, cool. I obviously, like I said, I can't speak for everyone, right? And everyone has their own unique and complex journey, and no one's journey is a straight line. It's all zigzags, right? And I'm sure that there are definitely people that have been formally trained or classically trained in whatever they do, and they left that institution, they found themselves, and they took big risks and they earned big rewards, right? And that isn't to say that just because you're self-taught and you have no constraints and no one to tell you who you are, that suddenly you're going to become an entrepreneur and become this millionaire, billionaire, or whoever you think you're going to be. But what I would kind of say is that, um, in terms of like success, I feel like in this day and age, nepotism is your best friend. And as crazy as that sounds, I definitely am one of those people that believes in it's about who you know, not what you know. Because like I said, okay, cool. Outside of before I joined this uni, I'm this different, quirky, fresh designer, but now I'm put in a group with 6 other people. There's how many
mm,
other people like me? Cool,
mm,
cool. The work looks different, and they're let's say it's different. It's unique and true to who they are. But there's so much talent that what
mm,
made you special isn't that special anymore. So then it kind of encourages you to work harder to be able to master your craft and to push your aesthetic or your push your designs further.
mm,
Um, but I would say that I believe that formally taught people that work within institutions or work within certain structures have a higher likelihood or probability of being successful, mainly because you have a whole system of support behind you. Yes, fair enough, and I can account for it as well. Being in uni, you still do not get a lot of support. I'm not gonna lie, but the support that I have, the resources that I have, is much more than what I had when I wasn't in uni. And funnily enough, one of the reasons I went back to uni,
mm,
because I'm one of those people that definitely believes that degrees are just pieces of paper. And obviously these days, this day and age, big companies are definitely moving more towards of an open-minded approach to opening up the hunt or like the search for applicants in terms of like Google saying that you don't have to have a degree anymore to to apply here and blah 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 blah. There was even this Apple designer that I spoke to personally, and he was telling me that he was on the board for the as in for interviewing interns, and the first time he did it, basically the rooms were just so they were just so monolithic, like, and they were just so they were so homogenous in a way where everyone just came from the same places. Everyone came from the same few unis. Everyone was the same race. Everyone was the same religion. Everyone had the same background. Everyone was from the same class. But the thing is, like, diversity is what is able to create all these unique and fresh ideas that companies are chasing. So, him and the rest of this board kind of went back to the drawing table, and they said, this time let's do it different, because we are getting the same people over and over again. And not only are we not giving people that are deserving of the opportunity, but we're also doing ourselves a disservice, because we are not going to be able to make the best work of our time if we're only using the same types of mentalities or minds. So they basically got the engineering team to block out people's first names and last names. They got rid of uploading their CVs, and they got rid of having any qualifications. So obviously the roles for like a certain thing, but people would only speak about who they are as a person and what certain things mean to them, and that's kind of how they basically picked. So it's like a blind selection, and he said that when it basically came to the time where the room is full of people, the room was way more diverse, and there goes like the percentages, like the breakdown of the different people that were there. It really similarly matches the breakdown of London's diversity as well. And he was telling me about this lady who's a marketing intern who is amazing at what she does. But when he spoke to her, she told him that she only has 5 GCSEs. Like she doesn't even have A levels. And this is someone that's amazing at what they do, but would have been given the opportunity if the approach of how they found these people didn't change. So, so in that kind of aspect in it, that's kind of why I went back to university, because a lot of the opportunities that I wanted to apply for, I had to be a student or I had to be a graduate, and I was neither of those things. So I go, do you know what? Even though I had a negative experience with university, I'm doing myself more of a disservice by not going back and dealing with whatever I have to deal with, because although it may not get me to where I want to go to, at least it will basically take me to the door. Whether I'm able to open it or not, it's up to me. But it's definitely going to be to my advantage. But you meet people that are in the industry, and your lecturers know this person, that person, this person. They throw networking events. They post opportunities for things that are just within the industry. Like for example, my course leader, he has links in Apple, and he is able basically to provide 2 spaces for a 6-month Apple internship with the design department. This opportunity is found nowhere on the internet. So how is someone going to be able to find these things being self-taught and not being in university? How are they going to get this chance? How are they going to find these things? That's kind of why I believe that formally taught people, because they have the structure and the support system behind them, they have a higher likelihood or probability of becoming successful, and it'll probably happen faster. Whether they are or aren't more talented, that can be argued, right? But for the most part, that's kind of what I believe.
I want to bring in a personal example that I have. I know a friend. Well, I mean, I'll give you 2 examples. One of them is someone I know personally, and another one is just something I got from an interview. So there's a music producer called Swiss Beats, who's worked with like literally the biggest artists out there, and he's established. He's a businessman. He does business on the side. He's very successful. And then he was asked, "Well, why are you in Harvard? Like, why are you taking classes at Harvard when you're established? What more can you learn?" And he said, "There's no way for me to be taken seriously when I'm in a room with old people who have degrees and have done things traditionally. They don't. I can be as successful as I want to be, but there's no way they're going to take me serious if I don't have the formal education to back it up." And that's the sad and harsh reality of most industries today. In terms of the creative industry, I know personally I have a friend who's a film director, and he's won short film awards, and he's been on major movie sets here in Denmark and stuff. But he's in film school now, and I asked him, like, why are you in film school? And he said one of his counselors in the creative field that they're working in has told him that if you don't have film school on your resume, it's going to be so much harder for you to go get funding for movies. So I think the reality is that if you don't have, like, you can clearly be self-taught and go like start your business and make a living off of that, but there's going to be some challenges and some hurdles that are hard to overcome unless you have that formal educational background. And I think I think that's going to change in the future, like you mentioned with Google University and Google not necessarily hiring people only with formal degrees. But I think right now, I think there's no way of escaping that. Majority of industries and majority of jobs requires some sort of formal education, unless they're hiring you as a for a job as an like you're an independent company and they're hiring you. But if you want to work at a company, most chances are mostly that you probably need formal education in most industries. Obviously, there's going to be exceptions to the rule, but I think generally that's the rule. That's at least my experience.
Yeah,
All
man,
right,
I
so
definitely agree.
Ray, I just wanted to quickly, before we move on, I wanted to quickly ask you what you think about whether it's a case of whether you have it or not in terms of creativity. Um, I feel like it's not as black and white as it seems, obviously, and Zoo has a strong opinion about it. My opinion kind of changes every now and then. I can't lie.
You a
Um,
flip flop. You flip floppy piece of paper.
Ooh,
well,
ooh, ooh, ooh.
I'm also shameless, so I don't mind. So with me, it's just a case of like I feel like you can learn to be creative, but now I kind of listened to your opinion a bit more and thought about it. I feel like if you want to be someone who's cookie cutter, as you say, I feel like you can become a creative through learning the tools and kind of copying people and their techniques and just kind of innovating in that way. But you won't be unique. You won't have that kind of personal flavor.
Exactly.
That's like my opinion at the moment. That's
Mm.
just my thoughts anyway. What do you think about it, Ray?
I think. Well, I don't think Zoo had a strong opinion. I think he added nuance to his opinion. So he started off saying, "I don't either you have it or you don't," but then you followed up on it and said, "Well, what is creativity anyway?" And I think that's the hardest thing to define, because creativity has kind of been this. People are kind of associating it with photography or graphic design or like visual design or whatever, but it could literally be, yeah, you could work in a, I think, at least in my opinion, you could be in the corporate world and still be creative. You could have
100%.
you could be a finance guy or a banker and you can be creative. It's just a matter of like, are you doing things in a way that's maybe outside the norm a little bit? It doesn't have to be completely crazy, but like, are you just doing things differently than normally? Like, are you doing things? Are you being an investment banker different from your colleague? I think that's like, if yes, if you found like a new way to work, a new way to optimize the process of work, then I think that's creative. We just don't view them as creatives.
Hmm.
View them as investment bankers, and that's kind of a boring thing. But I think even an investment banker can be a
What
creative.
about what about from an artistic perspective then?
I think I tend to agree with Zoo there. Either you're artistic or you're not. And I think there is some biological like you could back it up with like biological studies on the brain as well. Like some people are just hardcore at like math. I think maybe math is like the least creative field to know, but you could teach math creatively, right? So you don't have to be good at something. Like what you're good at doesn't have to be something creative, but if your job is to teach it to someone, you can be creative in in the process of teaching it.
Hmm.
But I think in terms of are you artistic or not, I think I think that's wired in your brain.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay, cool. We'll move on from there because we're on 50 minutes at the moment and we've still got a few things to talk about. um, Ray, did you want to talk about, you want to start talking about how you wanted to have a discussion to do with navigating the industry with clout versus talent, and what do you think about that and the whole networking type kind of um, discussion anyway?
Yeah, I mean we can keep this section short because we have something more interesting I think we have to get to later on. But
Mhm.
what do you think about like the industry? Do you think it's like talent, or do you think it's just based on clout? Or like I want your perspective on that.
Do you mean on you mean in the actual digital world or the physical world?
Just like the creative industry.
Creative industry. I would say
I mean, that's
I
wide.
would,
That's very general, but
yeah,
like
yeah.
photography, videography, visual design, filmmaking, etc.
I would say
Painting.
it's definitely like a mix and match. And this is another thing that kind of becomes a bit hazy and a matter of grey, not black and white. Mainly because success is another subjective thing. What does success mean to you? For some people it could mean a 9 to 5 job, and alhamdulillah they're grateful, they enjoy their job, and it fulfills them, and they're content. For other people that may not be enough, right? So it's stuff like where, with the industry, some people may not be the best at what they do, but they've been able to build a platform and they have clout, and all these big companies are coming to work with them, and they're being paid 100 grand minimum per video for like a 3 minute video. Do you know what I'm saying? And then you'll have someone that's super super talented but doesn't have the clout and isn't making nearly as much, or won't make ever that much. Period. But then there's also another factor where it kind of depends on how you apply yourself. So on the digital world, I definitely feel like clout matters. I'm not gonna lie. Like when you're on the digital world and you're some sort of creative, clout matters. Like if you really want to make, once again, success is subjective, but most people correlate success with their finances and their bank balance, right? But if you really want to be out here making real world money on a digital world, you need to have some sort of platform, right? Obviously, like, we can argue about the fact that people have been able to create different products and apps before they had clout, and the clout came after. But definitely feel like clout is definitely an important thing. I don't think it's what's the word again? I don't think it's make or break. However, once again, it definitely depends on how you define success. If you don't have clout, and you work within an agency or a studio, and you're constantly working with all these big companies, but no one's really recognizing you for an individual for what you do, you're only getting a small cut out of the pie. How much money is your studio taking? There could be people that aren't as talented as you that are getting paid double your salary, triple your salary, and you don't even know about it. But like then it's stuff like where if you had the exact same talent, but you just had 600k followers on Instagram, and suddenly sponsorships and companies are flooding into your thing, and you're working with Calvin Klein, and you're working with Canon and Nikon and Adobe. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so I don't know. I feel like it's definitely like a grey matter. So I don't necessarily believe that clout is integral, but I also feel like it's definitely like a nuanced, very layered conversation, because it all comes down to what does success mean to you.
Mm.
I want to give my opinion on this, but I want to hear MI's first.
Well, I was gonna refer back to how Zoo has gone back to uni for various reasons he said, and obviously one of them being like getting into these industry spaces and having these connections that are not advertised on the internet, and you're not going to be able to find unless you're on the inside. So I think having that network in place is very important, and that clout brings that network. And obviously, to get that clout, you have to do certain things and build your brand. But obviously, you can go about it in different ways, and like you said, it's not a black and white thing. So I agree with you there in that regard. Nothing really to add there.
I think companies are. I don't think talent matters at all when it comes to getting sponsorships and deals. If you have clout, like if you have 1 million followers, it doesn't matter how much you suck at something. Someone will pay you for it
100%.
because they're not paying because it's not about you. They're paying to access
Exactly.
your audience.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I think honestly, I think clout matters a lot more than talent in terms of like if we're talking about sponsorships and getting paid deals from your personal brand. Now, if we're talking you operating as a company and you approach another company to do work for them, then your clout is not going to matter. Because if Nike comes to me and says we want to get a video done, and I make a horrible video, no one's gonna care if I have 1 million. Like the guy with 1 million followers is the one who made it. No one's gonna care about that, and Nike's not gonna care about that either. But if they put me in the video, if they make a video and they put me in the video, then they're gonna care about. Then it's not me making something for them. Then it becomes about the video being about me, and that's way different. So I think it really depends on the situation. Do you want sponsorships and deals, or do you want clients?
Mm.
So I think it really depends. But I think generally you can make a lot of money just with zero talent and a lot of clout.
Segueing on from
100%.
this
We
topic,
see it all the time.
segueing on from this topic, and moving on to like how do you get clout and how do you build your brand? That's kind of what I want to also talk about.
Yes. How do I get clout? I like that. Because I want it. Let's go.
Not just get clout and build a following, but how do you get an engaging following? What would you say about that, Zoo? Because I feel like you have quite a strong following in terms of they seem like they're very engaging with the things you say and the things you do as well.
Listen, brother, ask someone else, because for me, I'm even so learning myself, bro. More so in a way where, okay, fine. Let me give you an example. Like, I have a friend called Cameron, and he is a nutrition coach, and he's a PT as well, right? He has a background in bodybuilding too, but he makes a lot of like fitness based like content, right? and we're always speaking about content and increasing engagement, increasing following, and you watch these videos on YouTube by Chris Do, in the future, how to get 10K followers a week, blah 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 blah, the algorithm, yada 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 yada. And it's stuff like, for example, where I know already that if I was making video based content too, alongside everything else I'm doing consistently, I know I would do a lot better. I know I'll do a lot better if I was on TikTok, doing whatever I'm doing. If I was on YouTube and I was making a video every single week, I know that my online brand would grow much, 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 much more faster. But then it's kind of stuff like when you, for example, Instagram, for example, right? I feel like my creative work is more appreciated on Instagram. And on Instagram, I only have like 690 followers. But on Twitter, I have like 6,000 and something. But my creative work on Twitter gets aired, literally blanked. So you have to understand, what is it that what are they here for? Like, so I generally feel like people on Twitter, they're here for my podcast partly, but they're mainly here for my nonsense and my takes on things. So
Yes.
you have to be smart about what is your audience actually here for? Because if you're providing a product to an audience that there's no demand for it, you're not going to get the engagement. But on Instagram, obviously, I get a better response to my creative work on Instagram. But the posts that I get the most interactions on are photos of myself, and I don't want to be an Insta bad bee. You get me?
Does
And
that frustrate you?
do you know what? No, do you know what? I think it didn't frustrate me. I think it confused me. But once I started doing the homework and understanding how the algorithm works, and carousel posts and blah 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 blah. Um, but at the same time, actually, I've always been someone that's believed that you have to play the game. And
Mm.
once you are able to build that platform, then once you have a loyal following, then you're able to make the content that you want to make, and you know that the people that are following you are going to mess with it. Period. So it's stuff like, for example, I would say the example I kind of have given in the past is that if we were still during the hype of the Cinnamon Challenge, right? But
Yeah.
I decided to make a story time about the primary school stuff. Who is searching when I was 9 years old? I broke into a primary school, but people
Mm.
are searching Cinnamon Challenge. And obviously I'm not saying that there's going to be like only me when you search Cinnamon Challenge, but I feel like there's a high likelihood of me getting more engagement, me getting more views if I'm following and jumping on trends, versus of making custom content that most people are not looking for. At the end of the day, this content creation, these platforms that you have, like if you're here to make money, you have to have a business perspective. And within business, if there isn't a demand for something, it is not going to sell. Period.
I think I'm going to be very honest. I've been very frustrated with like, so I have about like 5,000 something on Twitter,
Mm.
about 1,000 on Instagram, and I've definitely noticed my engagement just completely plummeting when I start promoting stuff like the Bluprint. And I've noticed it frustrating me even before we did Bluprint. Even when I post some of my photography stuff, that will frustrate me as well. But mostly because I feel like the I feel like I'm working against the app. I feel like I'm working against the algorithm. Like I have so much access to so many people, but because the first 3 minutes of me posting it, I'm not getting the right people looking at it. It's being buried. Like the algorithm is just burying it, so no one
Exactly.
else is seeing. So that's the part that's frustrating me. I'm pretty sure that out of the 5,000 people that are following me, I'm pretty sure I can get like 100 people to look at something. But I'm fighting against an algorithm where it's forcing me to remain active on social media if I want the algorithm to work in my favor. And that means I have to be glued to my screen and not do much other than being on social media. And like that has frustrated me a lot.
Yeah. I don't know. Mo, do you want to give your opinion?
I mean, yeah. I mean, me and Ray always talk about this, and we kind of reflecting on it. And like you said, there's things you can do, like Chris does videos where he's talking about building 10K followers in 1 week and stuff. And like me and you have discussed what I think about carousels and things like that. But like you
Yeah.
said, you gotta play the game sometimes. And
Yeah, bro.
unfortunately, it's slow grind, but we gotta do it regardless. Otherwise, you
100%.
can't beat the algorithm. It's a machine. It's not a human being. You know?
100%.
So yeah, I
100%.
want to swiftly move on to the last topic because yeah, it's already what is it? 1 hour now, and I wanted to really talk about this because I raised a little opinion on Twitter a couple of days back about this. I saw a couple of people. Well, I saw one person saying that when they see someone, well, a common trope when someone's raising kind of promoting their business or service or whatever they're doing is to promote the service, do like a little heartfelt message, and then at the end drop it costs £0 to retweet. And then I saw someone saying like on some real shit, if I see that, then I ain't gonna support you. And I saw like the quote tweets, and I was like, oh, like these dusty people. But there's also like a lot of people that reflected that opinion. So I was thinking, what do you guys think about that? Because I've got a strong opinion about it, and I disagree totally. But yeah, what do you guys think about it? And also, should people in your circle be obliged to support you?
Okay, cool. Obviously I've been doing this like independent stuff as well. And I know it's not as common for people that don't have a massive following already to be a solo host on a podcast. So I've kind of been doing things on my own for a while now. So I've definitely had my fair share of stuff. And in terms of, whether your circle should support you or not, I definitely think they should. But I'm someone who does not like to ask for things, not in a way where if I actually need help, I won't ask, but more so I want support and love to be organic. And if it's not, I don't want it, period. And that goes for everything. Friendships, it could be platonic, romantic, whatever. I want it to be organic. I don't want it to be forced. I don't want people to support me because I asked them. I want people to support my content and engage with it because they believe in it. Because I have to ask myself, like I said before, like with success and all these things, you have to ask yourself, why are you doing these things? Why have you started this podcast? Why are you making YouTube videos? Why are you making graphic design? Why are you making logos? And for me, like the most important thing for me is that I want it to be organic and authentic. And for me, I genuinely believe like if you make consistently high quality work, in terms of you getting your recognition, you receiving your credit and your flowers and your dues in general, it's not about if, it's about when. So the following and whatever else that will come with it, but just keep creating that organic, authentic, like sincere, good quality work. Because I feel like it does come to the point where you may, pop, off, a little bit on one post, whatever else, but then you kind of look back on your journey and you're not really happy with the kind of work that you made, and you don't really feel like it represents you, or you weren't being yourself. I think that's quite a pity. I think that's quite a shame. So I don't know. I definitely feel kind of that way about things.
I've heard MI say for the past couple of days he's got some strong opinions about this, so I want to hear his strong opinions.
Because I feel like a lot of these things, I agree with Zoo in that, in the past, I've promoted myself by asking people to help me promote myself, and I've literally asked them to just go ahead and retweet this, and I do feel a little bit like I feel a little bit shame in that, but because I feel like it's not as organic, but I feel like I had to do it to get to get somewhere. But how do I know who's actually engaging? Yeah, I don't really. And that's an approach I've kind of changed in recent times. I'm not begging for it. I'd rather do the slow grind. I'm ready for it. I'm here for it. But in terms of like the actual people saying that they don't retweet when someone says they're not £0 to retweet or whatever, I feel like that comes from a place of pride, or they feel a sense of like you're not gonna guilt me, or you're not gonna shame me into do it. But it's also, it doesn't hurt you at all. So what is it harming? That's what I don't understand. That's what I kind of like struggled to understand when I was reading all those opinions, because it does kind of feel a bit like they're guilting you into it, but you like, it doesn't take away from you, and you're supporting them a lot. But also, obviously, you gotta like respect what they're doing and enjoy their product or service before you support them. I think that's definitely something that you should always do. You shouldn't like change the way you support things because it's just someone that you like. If it's someone that I like and they're doing something that I don't agree with, then I'm gonna tell them. But yeah, man, it's just I just feel like it's such minimal effort, and you're making it seem like such a big thing just to preserve your pride, and that's the way I see it anyway. I feel like it's like a little ego boost for yourself when you say no, I'm not gonna do it because you asked. That's
I don't disagree with any of you guys, but I'm just for the sake of creating conflict, I'm gonna put on my devil's advocate hat.
yeah.
Your favorite hat.
Yes, my favorite hat. I love this hat.
Well,
I'm
we
gonna
know
put
that.
it
We
on.
know that in the past. We know that.
It's collector's edition hat. Oh,
Ray. If we pull up the receipts, hey,
Oh my God!
We will
Let's
see.
not do that, man.
We will
Let's
see.
not do that.
I'm gonna have to search Ray Roots and then search Devil Advocate on the search bar, see what comes up.
no, but yeah, go on.
I
Go on,
wanna,
Ray.
I wanna. I've thought about this ever since MI brought it up. I'm like I generally agree with you guys. I think it's minimum effort, and if like, why not support someone? Like, it's not gonna hurt you. But then I thought about it from another perspective of credibility. Like if I become, let's say Zoo, you have like 6,000 something followers, right? Your followers are following you for a reason because they want some sort. They like you. I assume they follow you because you like you. Or they like you. Or they like whatever
Most
it
of
is
them
that
hate
you're saying.
me. You
Yes.
should see my curious unanswered questions, baby. Because
Oh,
baby, the hateful comments that they come from people that follow you. So anyway,
probably from MI, but whatever.
I digress.
So people like I follow if I follow Zoo because I actually like your content. I like your personality and stuff. So when you start recommending stuff on your timeline or retweeting stuff on your timeline, I'm gonna assume it's because it's something that you like, and because I
Wow.
like you, I'm gonna try this out. And then if you start recommending every other person's products, I'm gonna start thinking like I can't take this guy's
Opinion seriously,
recommendation.
because where's the quality control?
It's you. You're my quality control. I
No,
think
exactly.
I,
Yeah.
you're my quality control. But if I see like 10 products on your page every day, I'm like at what point does this guy even try these products himself?
Exactly.
So is credibility a reason why you should maybe be a little bit more hesitant to promote? Like would you accept that argument?
To be fair, do you know what, yeah, let me answer this question and let me also finish off what I was saying earlier because I kind of lost my track of thought. But I definitely think that's one of my reasons as well. Is about, how credible is your following. But once again, it comes down to what is your goal? What is your goal? Because for some people, it's just about numbers. I just want 20K followers. Like you'll see people on the tier all the time. Oh my god, guys, please follow me. A company approached me, and if I don't have 20K followers, they can't offer me a campaign deal. Huh? But who are you? What do you do? What have you offered this world? Like, I don't understand. So I completely agree with the fact that do you know what, yeah, funnily enough, in this whole retweeting stuff, people will put in their bio retweets does not equal endorsements. So why retweeting it then? For controversy? This debate club. I'm confused. So for me, yeah, I will only retweet things or like retweet products or retweet platforms if I believe in them and I support them. And do you know what, yeah, not to dig up old bones in it, yeah, but me and Ray actually had this little conversation a while ago when
Yes.
I came onto Man the Gap and we spoke about brotherhood and whatever else. And funnily enough, I met MI or can I say Mo? Am I allowed?
Yeah, I go full government. I don't
Okay,
go
no
down.
worries, no worries. Okay,
Great, don't
yeah, but
worry.
yeah, so then, I actually met Mo because I was mutuals with Ray, because Ray had I believe he retweeted my thing, he either retweeted one of my tweets or it was just a thing where I just clocked that Ray and Mo were good friends or were like close mutuals or whatever you want to call it. But initially, MI or Mo supported me before Ray did. And when me and Ray spoke about it, Ray was like, because I just thought it was another podcast and blah 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 blah. And I was like, well, at the end of the day, like like I'm out here, my brother trying to do something, and I'm making beneficial quote unquote content. But at the same time, if you don't believe in it, you don't believe in it. And I think that's something that I had to come to terms with. And in terms of your circle being supportive or not supportive, your circle's not your target market. The majority of support that I get online is from strangers that I don't know, and predominantly women. Not from like a weird like, oh my god, I get bare girls. Nah, but more so just because they seem to resonate with my content more. And I also think that's because I am not your status quo type of guy. Like a lot of things that men believe in or most men believe in or go along with. If I don't like it, I'm gonna call it out, and I don't care what no one says about it. And I've gotten into loads of like conflicts in both my personal life and online as well over things like this as well. But to kind of add on to the things I was saying before, in terms of the support, I'm not gonna ask anyone to support me. I would love for them to support me, especially if I know them personally as well. But I'm also taking notes as well because I know that what I'm doing is not like I'm not playing a game. I'm not. This isn't a hobby for me. I'm doing this for real. Cool, fair enough. I may fall off here and there because working part time. I'm also a full time student and I'm doing all these other things. And I'm a brother and I'm a whatever. I'm an uncle. But I'm saying like you're pulled in so many different directions in life, and sometimes you're spread thin. And I cannot come and kill myself for content creation. Like if I am not in the best of health, or if my mental health is not all the way 100, I am not gonna provide the best content for you. So I'd rather save myself the effort, and I also do not want to make content that is meaningless, fam. Like people say, oh, just make episode every single week and blah 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 blah. But sometimes I don't have anything of benefit to say. I don't want to be talking about body count and all this empty doo-doo talk that people love to make content about because, gossip, gets engagement. But throughout, stuff that I've done in the past, like where I've been invited to panels, and there was one time where I got invited to a panel by this platform called Islamic Makers. I think that's what they're called, and I think they're like a South Asian Muslim run platform, and they basically invited me to come to the panel event. And I spoke with this lady. I can't remember what her name is, but I think her name was Abadesi. She's from a podcast called Czechish, and she was way more established. And obviously, at first, I was quite humbled because I was like, fam, for me to have been doing this, and that was in October 2018. So if you kind of do the maths, that was only me doing podcasting for 6 months. And that's kind of when I got my first proper panel. I did a panel before that, but it was with a mutual that I just do not like because they did a lot of do stuff to me too. So we're not going to bring that up. So that panel thing never happened. So the first professional panel I did was with a platform called Islamic Makers. It was in Huckletree Studios, which is based in the BBC. And it was like a professional setup, like a big audience. And alhamdulillah, I was really grateful to even be in that space. But none of my friends were there. None of my friends came. And I did another panel as well, where I basically got invited by the University of King's College, basically because they were doing a collaboration event with the South Asian Society, Somali Society, African and Caribbean Society, and the North African Society as well. And they basically were trying to tackle and speak about anti-blackness and colorism in our communities. And at first, I'm not like you, I didn't really want to do it because even though I'm a mixed race North African, I feel like I've seen it, but I haven't personally lived through what it feels like to be discriminated against for being of a darker complexion, right? But the thing was is that when they DM'd me, they told me that they DM'd a few other people and people just refused because they don't care about it. And for me, I had to ask myself, I've spoken about this on my podcast. I speak about it on my platform on Twitter. I've spoken about it in real life. I speak about this stuff all the time. Am I staying true to who I am as a person if I turn this down because I don't feel like I'm the right person? But if I turned it down, then there wouldn't have been any person. But once again, I went to this big event and I'm sitting on a panel with a doctor who's done like medicine for the Somali community. For the South Asian community is this Bangladeshi doctor who's done like research in this, and then another guy, it's a Nigerian guy who has a master's in this and that and that and that and that. And there I am, a podcaster and graphic designer, sitting on the same panel as these people. But it's basically because this sort of responsibility fell on my lap, and I've always preached that if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And if I would have turned that down, I would have been part of the problem. So for me, this content creating stuff is not a game for me. It's not just about public appearance. It's not just about public image. It's about how I feel about myself behind closed doors, the things no one sees. So for me, like you have to ask yourself, what's actually important for you. But once again, this big event, I went there on my own. I'm saying, and that was during a time where I was fighting student finance. Like I potentially was gonna have to leave uni this time around as well because they had made a mistake and they weren't budging, and I had to appeal it twice, and I was stressed out. But once again, like I said, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And I had to put all my personal problems aside to make sure that I'm there to be able to speak about something that's very important to me and something that needs to be spoken about more and more and more. But once again, no one that I knew was in the crowd. So you have to ask yourself, do you want the support to be organic? And of course, like I don't hate people for not supporting me and not being there for me, but I definitely remember it and I'm not going to forget it. But it's definitely important just to take note of who are the people and what's the audience that support you the most when you weren't anyone. I'm not saying that you having a small platform makes you a nobody, but you kind of get my gist in terms of before this big platform, before you became this global or national brand, like who were the people that were really holding you down? And these are all the things that I'm taking notes of, and I have a very, very good memory. I remember a lot of things, and I remember a lot of things, especially when they're attached to emotion. So you can be damn sure that if you made me feel a certain way, your name is written down and imprinted in my brain.
Oh, isn't there an anime where you put someone's name in a book and they die?
Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah. But the thing is, I'd be a fraud if I quoted that because I've never watched it before.
I haven't watched it either. I just know the plot.
Oh yeah.
That's generally the thing with me here. I'll make movie references to movies I've never watched before.
And he's not joking about it. He genuinely makes whole ass references and quotes, and then
I'll do it shamelessly. I'll quote it sometimes either. I even do that.
honestly,
Come on, Spielberg.
Hey, man, listen. I'm a. Have you seen? This is a movie I've actually watched. Have you seen Green Book?
Maybe. I'm not sure. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
the main character. His name is Tony Valalonga, but he goes by the name Tony Lip because he's a professional bullshitter. And that's what I feel like I am sometimes. Like I'm a bullshitter. I can make it sound like I know what I'm talking about.
100% Dr. Ibn Source of sorcery.
No, yeah, I'm a
So imagine we had a psychotherapist on the podcast, and she thought one of us had a PhD.
Because
Yeah.
we're a doctor, isn't it?
Yes,
Screaming.
she came on and was like, I was kind of hesitant to come on because I didn't want to get refuted by a guy with a PhD. And I was like, there, like shaking my head. I was like, oh my days, this guy.
I do not have a PhD, man. I do not have a PhD.
Also, do you know? You just reminded me of the doctor thing. Just before we move on, right? Funnily enough, that same panel event that I was at for King's College, only one after the event, only one person that I was mutuals with, which was the Somali doctor that was next to me, the lady. Only she said hello to me. The rest of them did not say hello to me at all. Like throughout the 2 hour event, 2.5 hour event, they were all bouncing off each other, and literally no one aside from the Somali lady bounced off what I was saying. The rest of them literally acted like, "Why are you there?" And obviously, it kind of makes you feel a certain way. But fam, at the end of the day, fam, I've been doing this on my own already. And whether or not you feel like I have the qualifications to do this, and fair enough, I wasn't, I didn't come with a list of, oh, this study and read this book and chapter 4, page 11, verse 2. Like, I don't have to do that because sometimes people need stuff to be broken down to them in the language or in a way they understand. Because you can sit here and use all these big words to make you look smarter than you actually are, but are people actually benefiting and absorbing what you're saying? That's the question. So, people look at me funny because I don't have a master's or a PhD, but sweetheart, me and you were sitting on the same panel. What now?
Bro, honestly, I have a master's degree. It took me years to get a job. Like, it's not gonna matter in real life. Like people are incredibly so much more successful than people with PhDs and master's degree. And like I've noticed after I got my degree, I thought I wore it as like a badge of pride, but then I noticed in real life it doesn't matter.
Right.
In practical sense, it doesn't matter much. But before we wrap up, I want to get to something you mentioned before. You went to this panel and like no one you knew personally were there like to support you. How does that feel? Because let me tell you about a little bit about me for like 30 seconds. Like I've done creative stuff ever since I was a kid. I would say genuinely I've had maybe one or two people in my entire circle who have supported me from the start of what I do. Like now I have a lot more people around me that are supportive, but like when I started out, when I wanted to do something, I wanted to go do this creative thing or that creative thing, I would not have anyone join me for my creative stuff. So, and it made me feel like it gave me a chip on my shoulder. Like now I'm doing it to prove them wrong, but it also made me feel bad. Like I didn't feel good about it. But how does it make you feel? It's like you're doing something that's literally huge. Like you're on a panel that's with an important topic, but then like no one is there. How does that make you feel?
Obviously, like there's definitely times where it makes you feel shitty. But like I said, I know what my mission is. Like I know who I am. I know what my ethos is. And for me, like the way I've been raised, the way my parents have raised me, is to be a man or slash person of my word, and that's very very important to me. And that's why I've had a lot of conflicts with people, or why I'm not able to be friends with everyone, because I'm very by the book. Like if you say you're gonna do something, do it, right? So for me, I've been what I was doing. This was in 2019. So at that point, I was doing my podcast for like a year and a bit now, like maybe like a year and a half, maybe even almost 2 years now. And how can I be on my podcast and my Twitter profile preaching about anti-blackness is causing this many issues and colorism this and Moroccan TV is not really it's not really representative and it's intentional and all the ads that we see on TV are whitewashed and there may be some like white skinned blue eyed blonde haired baby and all the hair adverts are Pantene with someone with like long silky hair when it doesn't reflect the actual population of the people that actually live there. And my community is suffering from so many different mental diseases like colorism and anti-blackness. How can I preach this stuff on a day-to-day basis, fam? But then when I'm presented the opportunity to stand before people in a what's the word again, in like a respected institution, and I'm putting it down because I think that's just too much to ask of me. Like how, like for me, it's not just about how I look to people. It's about how do I look to myself. Like how do I look to Allah? Like how can I be out here preaching these things and I'm not living by the code? Do you understand? So for me, I'm very by the code, fam. If I said I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. If I'm preaching a certain thing, that's what I'm preaching. But I also need to make sure that I'm practicing that as well. So that's why it's very, very
Right.
important for me. So that's because that was my goal. Of course, it hurt me that my friends and family weren't there to support me and cheer me on in the crowd. Bearing in mind, this is a massive like auditorium, whatever you want to call it, like 100+ people, and I'm there by myself, in the space where no one knows me with a microphone to my mouth, and I'm speaking about something that's so sensitive. And so for me, obviously that bothered me, but at the same time, my goal is greater and it's bigger than this chip on the shoulder. It's bigger than people not showing up for me. It's bigger than me not seeing people I know and blah 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 blah. So you have to ask yourself, what is it? What are your intentions? And if you feel like you're burning out, maybe it's time to sit down, and actually reflect on your journey and reestablish or maybe recreate your intentions. Because if you're working without a purpose, I don't think you're working at all.
I hear that.
It's on
I
what?
agree.
Yes, sir. All right, cool. So we're gonna wrap it up. Is there anything else you guys want to add before I let Zoo plug himself again?
No, I just want to say thank you for coming on the podcast. Like we go through like it's been a while since we've spoken, so it's been a joy to kind of have you on today. And first of all, just to hear your voice. It's been a while, but also like your perspective is always interesting and valuable to me at least. So I appreciate it.
appreciate it, bro. Likewise, like honestly, I genuinely believe in, I believe in your platform. I believe in what you guys are doing. I think it's amazing. I think we need more people like you. That's why, like whenever I do see the content, I'm always there trying to retweet, shout out. I'm not doing it out of pity. I'm not doing it because I know you, because I feel sorry for you. I'm doing it because I believe in your mission, and I hope that you guys believe in it as much, because I think you guys are doing amazing things at Lohanberg, and I wish you all the best.
King,
Appreciate it.
king of support. Absolutely.
Period.
I'd love to hear it. All right, cool. Before Zoo ends off, yeah, it's been a rough year. 2020 has been a rough year. It feels like it's just a sequel has continued on. I hope that for everyone out here, this is my first podcast back, so hopefully 2021 is easier on everyone. Take care of yourselves. Don't worry too much. Don't be too hard on yourselves. If you want to eat burgers back to back for a whole week, go for it, man. But yeah, man, MI Visuals here. I hope you guys are all good, and I just wanted to drop a little. Yes,
What
We're gonna
the
get
hell is
copyright.
that?
You shut that off. We're gonna get copyright strikes right now.
Who's that?
sea shanties here. Sea shanties
that?
on deck. You know that meme of those white guys with the sea shanty in the background? Haven't you seen it?
No, who's that?
I'm gonna have to send it to you.
No to white supremacy. No to white supremacy. No, I'm playing.
Anyway, I'm going to drop off with a little lighter note, so I'll let Zoo plug himself now.
All right, cool. So yeah, guys, appreciate you guys for having me on your platform. Once again, my name is Zoo, aka Zubair, aka Zubair or Zubir in Darija, which is my native language. But yeah, so guys, if you enjoyed listening to me and you enjoy my personality, you can find me or find my podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Anchor, Google Podcasts, and a few other platforms as well. And if you want to follow me and see my day-to-day shenanigans, I'm more active on Twitter than Instagram. But you can find me at BookofZu, which is BOOKOFZU. And if you're anyone in the industry that wants to look at my work, I also have a portfolio available as well at www.bookofzu.com.
Okay, thank you once again for coming on. I really appreciate you, and I look forward to following your creative journey and seeing where you go. Honestly, from out, I appreciate it, and yeah, man, keep it up, keep up the good work, and we'll see you at the top.
A pleasure. Peace out. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Bluprint Pod. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you tell a friend and stay tuned for the next one. Peace.